Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, as you've just seen, roads will always be at the heart of mobility. We're going to have a very high-level discussion of this theme at the heart of this meeting this morning. Thank you very much for your presence. Just a quick word to say perhaps thank you for all the people who organised that fantastic meal yesterday evening at the Negresco. C'était génial. On peut peut-être les applaudir.
It was absolutely great. We should give them an applause. All the people who organized this fantastic dinner last night at the Hotel Negresco.
Several presentations from our high-level speakers. We're extremely flattered and honoured that they are with us. And afterwards, I will ask them a few questions before we go into the closing speeches. So first of all, it's my pleasure to ask you to welcome on stage the General Manager of Technology at Shell UK, Mr. John Reid. John, thanks for being with us. All speakers have about 12 minutes. You have a timer in front of you, and there we are. You have your slides, and you're going to tell us about roads and the mobility of the future, Professor.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you all. It's a great honor. I should say bonjour, ça va tout le monde? Hola, guten Tag, and then I've exhausted my abilities in language. So the rest of this will be in English. So if you need translation, I hope you have the headsets. So as the opening credits showed, our world is changing. Now, Shell does a lot of scenario planning. We look at these things quite closely. It's important to all of our businesses, not just the bitumen business that I help look after, but also our fuels business, our lubricants business, even our aviation business, etc., with regard to airports and so on and so forth. So understanding how the world is going to change is very important. And I think that while our numbers may change, may be a bit different to some of the ones that were shown here, the trends that we are talking about are the same. So world population is growing, and it's at a rapid pace. Urbanization is taking place, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. In addition, I see everybody at the Congress walking around with their smartphones. And so individual empowerment, digitized interfaces, user-centered services, so they're very, very much aimed specifically at the individual rather than the general populace, is becoming the way that we do business. I was listening to something the other day which was saying that by 2020, which is just around the corner, it's conceivable that 70% of all interactions with the internet will no longer be by a screen. So people who already talk and order their food, etc. and stuff, or your refrigerator orders whatever is missing, it's already here. And it's becoming more and more prevalent. Climate change is a big issue. Perhaps there are some people who still don't believe in this, they don't buy into it, but certainly at Shell we do. And we do believe absolutely that if we don't control that climate change to within 2 degrees, it's going to be catastrophic for mankind. And so there is a real need for us to look at climate change. And connected mobility. So how we connect society is incredibly important. We're going to have autonomous vehicles. I think it said there 70% of vehicles will be autonomous. But there is some view that you can't mix humans driving and autonomous vehicles safely. And so there is some question about, if we make the switch to autonomous, we need to make that switch completely so that all the vehicles can talk to one another and interact. And that creates problems for our pavements, which I'll talk about in a moment. And so urbanization. Congestion is going to become a major problem. 9 billion people on the planet by 2030, I think it's at 8.5, but 70% of those will live in cities, and there will be 41 megacities by 2030. So just think about that growth. Less than 10 today, or 14 or something around that mark, but 41 by 2030, which is only 12 years away. Traffic is going to at least double, if not treble. Pollution is going to go up if we don't do something. And if you think about it, if traffic is going to at least double or treble, and we need the CO2 to be halved, then we've got to do an awful lot with regard to controlling the CO2 which is being produced. And in fact, that's why a company like Shell actually believes fundamentally that we need a carbon charge. We need this across the globe, etc. and stuff, because that fiscal driver will create innovation. It will create change. Without the fiscal driver, it's unlikely that we will get the necessary change and control this climate change to within 2 degrees. Noise. The biggest issue in terms of ambient noise that people refer to is traffic noise. And if you're in the urban environment and you're going to double the amount of cars and you're going to have 70% of the people, that issue with noise is going to become ever greater. And safety. Again, 31% of fatalities are pedestrian and bike users. But if we're in the urban environment, more and more people are going to be pedestrians and bike users. And so are we going to see a greater level of fatalities? And the answer to that would be yes, unless we do something, we change something. So what does this mean in our view? So we need a connected ecosystem where cars, roads, traffic signage, users are all interfaced together so that they work seamlessly instead of against one another. We believe that cars will be powered by electric batteries, and that means they will need recharging. So does that mean that we change all the fuel stations around the world and make them capable of electric charging? Certainly that's one of the ways. But also we're now talking about, can we actually make a road itself generate electricity and charge the vehicles as you drive? So maybe in the future, instead of you going to a fuel station, you'll just drive along a section of road that will charge your vehicle, and you will pay a pence per mile or a cents per mile charge for charging your vehicle. Who knows? We will have to see. And shared access to vehicles. We talked about that again. That's very, very important. And the reason that it's important is because it changes why people are in vehicles. Today, it's about moving people and goods from A to B. Tomorrow, it's about social connectivity. It's about people being able to sit in their cars and be able to use their phones or talk to the internet, talk with their friends, whatever it may happen to be. But actually, the action of moving is not the actual, the fundamental purpose any longer. And so we have to ask our questions. What else can you make roads do other than move people and goods from A to B? And I'll give you some thoughts about that. So In terms of roads, so they must get better at what they already do. One of the things I think is missed quite a lot is the fact that if we have autonomous vehicles will be able to drive much closer to one another. So the conventional rest periods that we have on our road network that allows the roads to recover from the strains and stresses that they experience will go away. So the damage which is going to be done by those vehicles is going to be much higher, even for the same axle loadings in the future with autonomous vehicles. In addition, everything we see and every indication that we have says that people want to try and get more load per vehicle because that creates economies. And so as a consequence, that will do more damage to our roads. So the roads have to get better at what they do. They have to be longer lasting. They have to be designed for that purpose. So empirical designs looking backwards aren't going to work. We need to look at designs that look forwards and use predictive modeling, damage mechanics, whatever it might happen to be, in order to be able to predict the type of structures that we require going forward. If at all possible, they should be self-repairing. Okay, if you look around the world does not have the money to be able to repair the road network it has, and that road network is expanding. Okay, so I think that typically in the past we used to design our roads for 20 years. The average maintenance period for our roads is 80 years. So there is already a real disconnect between the money we have available and the road network that we have today. So we've got to do something. Roads need to be safer. Okay, I think we will see greater uses of clear binders. They may glow in the dark so that we can remove ambient street lighting, which reduces the CO2 impact. It also declutters the road, makes it safer for people. We will need better skid resistance, or perhaps I should say more consistent skid resistance. Because if you have an autonomous vehicle, unless it can really sense whether a road is more slippery or less slippery, you're going to need consistency in that skid resistance in order to be able to ensure that these vehicles can all stop. We're going to need to provide cleaner solutions. So whether it's odor reducing or neutralizing, we're going to have more recycled, and lots of this discussion has been around the use of recycled material. That's critically important. And for the reasons I mentioned earlier, we're going to need to find solutions which are less noisy. And roads have got to get smarter. They've got to do other things than just move people and goods from A to B. So they're going to need to fight air pollution. They're going to need to capture nitrous oxides and SOxes. They're going to need to capture volatile organic components. They're going to need to capture PM2.5 and PM10 particulates that get breathed into the lungs, etc. and stuff, and stay there, cause asthma and these sorts of problems. We're going to need them to generate electricity. So it's already possible to use heat transfer to create electricity in a pavement. But why not use kinetics? Why not use piezoelectrics? So the actual movement of the road generating the electricity that we go forward. And if we can generate electricity one way and pump it out to the grid and essentially reduce the amount of hydrocarbons that we have to burn, etc., to generate electricity, then why can't we, and so that's a good thing in terms of generating money from the road network. But also, during the winter, why can't we feed electricity back to the road, convert it into heat, which would defrost the road? Then we don't have to have winter maintenance. The problems that we see today all around the world with potholes would to at least some degree be reduced. The cost of maintaining those roads in the winter would be reduced. They're going to need to perform at high standards in extreme climate conditions. Okay, I mean, we see around the world, differences in the climate than we used to. It causes flash flooding. So, if we're going to have more urban environment, we're going to have more paved areas in those locations. The prevalence of flash flooding with the climate change that we're seeing is going to go up. So we need pavements that are able to take that water away and to be able to survive for much longer under those conditions. Even the 2 degrees centigrade that we're talking about makes an enormous difference in the life of a pavement. So when we're doing the analytical designs and looking forward to try and predict the type of roads that we require, then we are going to need to take that into account. We're going to need to take that 2 degrees C, or whatever that climate change is, forward. And so this is a very quick run through. I hope I've given you a little bit of background, but what I also want to do is to set some challenges for the audience and for society as a whole. So firstly, there's a lot of innovation out there, but typically we are very conservative in our industry. If I take the example of polymer-modified bitumens, we developed them 50 years ago. It's their 50th birthday this year, yet they are still not widespread across the entire world. And even where they are widespread in use, etc., in some parts of Europe, they're still not as prevalent as they should be in order to be able to mitigate some of the things we've been talking about. So innovation needs to be accepted far more quickly. We need engagement. So we need society and the public stakeholders to fully endorse this innovative mindset, and it needs to be real and transferred into real projects. So not just talk, but actually do. And we need to do that quickly. We need collaboration. No one company, no one government can do this on their own. Can't address the CO2 challenge, can't address all of the issues with the roads, etc. and stuff. We have to work together far more than we've ever done in the past if we're really going to make the roads of the future what we need them to be. And we need a new framework. Okay, the traditional way of contracting for our roads, I do not believe is going to be suitable for the future. This collaborative, engaged, innovative mindset is going to be absolutely required if we are going to change our roads to be able to deliver everything that's going to be required by society in the future. And I'll finish with one quote, and I like this quote very much. I think that it's very important, and some of you, maybe all of you, may have heard of it before, but that's that the pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again. And if you just think about that for 1 second, what that really means, ever since the Industrial Revolution, the pace of change has been getting quicker and quicker and quicker. And it already feels like it's incredibly fast and we can't keep up, but that pace is going to have to accelerate even faster if we are going to deliver on society's requirements for us. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening and say goodbye.
Wow, what a fascinating look ahead to the challenges that you've set, Professor Reid. I'll invite all the others to come and join you, and at the end we'll have a short interchange of views. I'm sure that will be very interesting. But let's go on to the next presentation of switcher, je crois, en français. Nous avons le Open Lab.
So now we have Alexis Offergelt from Michelin, and I thank him in advance for his presentation. Good morning, everyone. I will be speaking French, and of course, between Michelin and the roads, it's a long story. It goes back far. It's a love story. So I will talk about Open Lab and the initiative that Michelin has launched with partners and ecosystems. And I'll talk a lot about humility as well, which is new to us. We are convinced that we can solve problems. And of course, that I share absolutely what John has just said. I would like to just to play a wee film about tomorrow's tires. I won't be speaking, it's in the film. You will see if we can launch the film about the concept and future visions.
Alors, vous l'aurez compris,
So, as you understand, this doesn't exist yet, but so it's just a concept for now. But it could happen because, it's no longer pneumatics because, there's the word, air that's in it. Of course, now we're looking at recycling it and make it very adaptable to different situations. So this is tomorrow's vision of the future of technical techniques, of future of techniques, and then of course mobility will be turning around services rendered. If we can, so now we will look at the link between Michelin and the roads. So did you know? Some of you did, some of you didn't. Maybe some of the French did. That Michelin actually invented kilometers lanes, and it's been more than 100 years now that Michelin has been looking at road guides, to foster mobility, because at the time, or what's more than a century ago, it was really complicated to look at that. And of course, to have a map and find a service station, mechanic, or such and such. And so they had published these guides way back then. So if you are connected to a Wi-Fi network, I think you know a better way forward. You know this motto, and which means, how can we offer everyone a better way to move forward and to transport, people and goods, and another way of doing tires, actually. And some of you may know the challenge as of challenge Vidabum. It was born in 1998, thanks to our Michelin director at the time. He had the dream of doing the Davos of mobility. Worked with the manufacturers and maybe the vehicle of tomorrow, for example, electric. And so they was working with more and more actors of mobility. And as of last year, we changed the name, and we called it Moving On. And it's happening in Canada, in Montreal. And so the startups and institutions, as John said.
of the sorry for that. Okay.
So what I'll talk to you about now is moving on. So open. This is by researchers, and it means that innovation of tomorrow will be going through ecosystems. We've got lots of partnering going on, with respect to research with Vinci as well. We work with others like Colas and a lot of others. So how do you work in an ecosystem environment with Open Lab? So Open Lab really does, it's working on sustainable mobility, and they will be working together. It's not that easy, actually. I think you were able to experiment with this. We have 3 objectives, and one is anticipating strategic anticipation and prospective. So to see what you can share, imagine the future together with several different industries, so that we can look at it correctly, more of us at a time, instead of just asking consultants to do a resume, although we do work a lot with consultancies. But so this is a strategy over the long term, and also we have a plan for innovation and co-innovation. And so with respect to future requests, so what can be the offer or the supply that we can imagine as of today? So that should be cropping up soon. And of course, the influence of the public, influence of society, and of public powers as well. So we rely on a broad ecosystem for all of this, and some of you were already involved in private companies, automobile, think tanks, consultancies, academics as well, very important to us, governments that are absolutely essential to have their support to make things move forward, designers, startups, public institutions. And so we try to work together in a common interest. And now we see on the screen the member associations of this Open Lab. There's still a little bit of space for other firms to come in and join. And you see these are firms, various sectors, transporters, telecommunications, insurance, underwriters, Saint-Gobain Sous. These are consultancies, and Michelin's. We are just one amongst another, you see, even though we are leading this. And so there's, and moving on, there's by Michelin, and I'm announcing this, it's a scoop. It's not going to be any longer by Michelin. It's going to be shared. So what we propose with this ecosystem is various mobility systems and a community of interest, which is a gathering of people assembled around a topic of common interest, as you see on the screen. And we have some communities that are more oriented towards think tanks, others that are more towards action and innovation. So prospects for the futures, business models, which are very important to imagine, for imagining concrete work together. So what we are looking for with interest groups is strategic aspects, influence. Now here I'm giving you 3 aspects, the internet of objects, for example, and work on intelligent vehicles, for example, automated vehicles. We worked with a startup that became a big firm, actually, and we're also working on climate and what are the quick wins, the quick solutions that we could place on the market in order to speed up all of the issues that were set down at the COP21 talks. And so these are the firms that are working together on these topics. That's what's important, actually, is to work together on these topics, on they are strategic prospects, but they're not really into business model creation. And so we are looking at what the impact is, what does the last mile urban area and for 2030, what's that going to look like? Now for beyond 2 degrees Celsius, what are the quick wins here? There are sometimes competitive firms that come in and give some common ideas and solutions. We did that recently. And also the use of identifying. We also identified Easy Miles, this company that does automated vehicles and smart mobility. And so this is what I wanted to say. We also tried to promote, and this is work that is done on a continuous basis throughout the year. And this message that I wanted to convey is that we wanted to have a community of interest for cell vehicles and even amongst competitors sometimes, if it's possible to talk about these topics. We'd be pleased to speak with you. Of course, what I'm talking about here, moving on, we have Continental and others as well. So it's a real challenge for us, but it's extremely interesting. And so now I would suggest that you look at the topics of moving on. There's no advertising whatsoever, and it's going to be 30 and 31 May and June 1st in Montreal, Canada.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alexis. Thank you for your film as well. You gave us an idea of what to be expecting in terms of innovation.
The senior advisor at IRU, which is the International Transport Operators Union, is here from Switzerland. Jens Hugo, thank you very much indeed. Let's listen to your presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to be here today and to address this distinguished audience. While the presentation is fixed here, I would like to give credit to my two previous speakers. The one from Michelin really showed how active they are in terms of sustainable development, and especially the presentation from Shell was really good because they challenged us. He challenged us from leaving our comfort zone and to act fast on activities. And I tried to, with my presentation to do the same thing. A few words about the IRU to start with. The IRU, International Road Transport Union, is the international organization which represents the transport operators globally. So we speak on behalf of truck operators, taxi and coach operators, and as such, we are the sister organization of your organizations. We're the road users. And as a matter of fact, just to show how close we are, we celebrated our 70th anniversary last Friday, and we launched a truck going from Geneva to Oman, where our World Congress will take place in November. And the slogan of our 70th anniversary is, in fact, "We love the road." So that's how close we are in terms of partnership. Now, let's go into my presentation in detail. Everybody's talking about sustainable development. Sustainable Development Goals is top of the agenda. And in fact, our commitment to sustainable development reaches back to the 90s. And already then, we prepared and developed our 3I strategy for sustainable development based on innovation, incentives, and infrastructure. So we believe that innovation is the best to address the environmental performance of road transport and to reduce the environmental footprint of road transport. To do that, however, we need real business incentives from governments to expedite the penetration of these latest technologies, and infrastructure, the third I, is a sine qua non condition. Without free-flowing traffic, adequate investments into roads, making best use of existing infrastructure, maintaining infrastructure, we will not be able to achieve our goals in terms of sustainable development. Now let's talk about, by the way, keep this in mind, I'll come back to that at the end of my presentation. Now let's talk about the infrastructure and have a look with me at this slide here. It shows the key corridors, transport corridors from Asia to Europe, some in the STAN countries, Middle East, Southeast Asia. These are the corridors where goods are transported from Far East to Europe. Now, we transport a lot of goods along those corridors, and we did a lot of caravans to see how good it is to transport along those corridors. And quite often, I have to say, quite often, our drivers see this: adequate roads, no traffic, until they reach the border, and then they see this: long traffic queues, waiting times of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you just idle your vehicle, you waste fuel, you waste productivity. And allow me to put some figures after this impediment. 57% of the transport time is lost at border crossing procedures. And this creates an atmosphere which is very conducive to corruption, and it comes to no surprise that actually 38% of the transport cost is illicit payment. It's bakshish. The reason for all of that is inappropriate border crossing procedures. And if you go even a level higher on those figures, and you look at scientific studies, the Hague Consultancy Group, Economic Barriers on Road Transport, you see that for every extra dollar that you pay, you lose another $2 in missed business opportunities. And this ratio of 1 to 2 could actually go up to 1 to 6, 1 to 8, 1 to 16, depending on what kinds of goods you transport, perishable goods or high-value goods. So it can be really a penalty on the economy as a whole if you penalize road transport. There are instruments, there are solutions for this. Implement tried and tested UN conventions. They address customs issues. There's a TIER convention, a harmonization convention. Now, don't get me wrong, we are happy for every single millimeter of road that is built. But when you invest into roads, you need to link the soft impediments and need to address the hard impediments at the same time. And that is really crucial, linking the soft and the hard impediments and making sure that both are addressed in the proper way. Now, looking forward a little bit, we see that the biggest trend in our industry is the digitalization of transport. Digitalization of TIER, electronic consignment notes, and ultimately, these digital documents will unleash the full potential of transport, the full potential of intermodal supply chains in transport. And here, I want to do it now the other way around. You can address the soft impediments easily with this, but you need to address the hard impediments as well. What's the purpose of having a container arriving at the harbor if ultimately he cannot be transported forward because there's a lack of adequate hinterland connections? So again, you need to link the two together when you address these issues. Now, looking forward, we're in the closing session, so allow me to do this. Looking forward, and we already heard the statement from the colleague from Shell, autonomous vehicles are here to come. You can dispute a little bit when they come. Are they going to come in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? We believe they come much, much earlier than we all expect they will be. We did a study together with the International Transport Forum, the trade unions, and the vehicle manufacturers on managing the transition to driverless road freight. And you see there will be a lot of changes to the drivers. You don't need drivers in the future anymore. There will be a lot of changes from the vehicle-to-vehicle communication. Vehicle manufacturers said, no problem, we can deal with that. However, we also figured out that maybe the infrastructure is not yet ready for this. The infrastructure might, in some areas, yes, could be good for tests, but overall, I think the infrastructure, and this is according to the study, is not ready yet to accompany the advent of autonomous vehicles. Is our industry ready? We're challenged at the moment from new entrants like the Ubers of the world that challenge our business model. They also come up with new ideas how to transport goods. I mean, we think about autonomous vehicles. They think about, hey, let's deliver goods by drones. So there's a complete new idea on what is the need for infrastructure. And the question that I have here to you, that the question that we ask us ourselves is, are we as associations, as organizations, ready for this change? I think we have to become ready for this, and we need to change our work, and we need to leave our comfort zone to keep up with the pace of this change. Are our services ready? Another good question. When I turned 18, the first thing I wanted to have is a driver's license and a car. That was my freedom. Get a car, get out there. When I talk to my kids these days, they say, well, car now, I don't want to have a car. I mean, it's so costly, it's just an asset, I don't need that. I just want to get from point A to point B, and this thing should tell me how to get there. The cheapest way, the fastest way. I don't want a car, I just want to get from point A to point B. They see mobility as a service. And if you think this through, you could say, shouldn't we have roads as a service? That, for example, you book your slot where you can drive. You book your parking lot already in advance. So you become a service provider and not a road builder anymore. So I think that could be an interesting idea of a change of mindset and leaving our comfort zone. I mean, we're confronted with this with the mobility as a service. Think about it, roads as a service, maybe it's an interesting concept. Now, before I come to the end of my presentation, I said I would come back to the issue of sustainable development, how we can work together on it and how can we address it together. And at this point, I would like to ask the regie to show a short movie in this respect. And to close my presentation, I have three things. We know what the challenges are. We have to leave our comfort zone. That's number two. And number three, I think we need to take leadership in managing the transition proactively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jens Hugel. We now go back into French. Nous sommes ravis d'avoir avec nous le chef du service de la gestion du...
We are very pleased to have with us the Deputy Director for Infrastructure and Transport, the C, and this is Mr. Poupard. And I would like to have you come and join us when you're finished your presentation. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be in the sunshine in Nice, where this is a big difference for me and my Parisian life. And this is an excellent opportunity for me to speak about the roadways and the answers that we have for tomorrow's mobility. In Paris, the PPRS conference, the former one, really highlighted assets and gestion, management of assets. But actually we have to speak in the present and look at our citizens and all of the issues that we have to deal with at the Ministry of Transport. Priority of maintenance is a policy that is well ensured, and this was, of course, mentioned at the Congress's introduction ceremonies. The topics, intelligent mobility, connected vehicles, intelligent AVs, etc., are all of the topics of this conference, and infrastructure as well. So it's true, despite all of the criticism that we undergo, will remain at the heart of mobility, of tomorrow's mobility, and we are all convinced of this at the ministry. And that's why the minister, Madame Elizabeth Bourne, wished to organize a session regarding mobility and a huge encounter on this topic. And so there is a national mobility strategy set down as well. There are 50 think tanks and 600 experts are involved. 3,000 citizens or inhabitants are involved and have given their proposals over the internet, 30,000 propositions in all. And then there are conferences, etc., that all contribute to set down a mobility strategy on a national level. Territorially, sustainable infrastructure, as well as maintaining the Paris talks afloat. And we're talking about thermal vehicles in 2040 and setting up all of the infrastructure necessary or required for clean environment, hydrogen stations, charge up battery charges for cars, etc. And we have to free up the innovation to serve tomorrow's mobility. And on this last topic, I wanted to highlight this because it matches what we talk about here today. At the conference, we really insisted on innovation, and a lot of proposals came up regarding mobility, and there will be proposals to the government coming up. The AV in 2020, carpooling, innovative mobility, mobility as a service, and also opening up the transportation data, creating startup firms dedicated to mobility, as well as others. And the last topic would be to guide and develop new mobilities. The roadways are no longer just asphalt strips. They have to respond to the issues of tomorrow's mobility. Some of the topics could perhaps handle new paradigms for the roadways. And we can also say that we're going from infrastructure to services, as was highlighted a moment ago by the preceding speaker. And I think we have to come back to infrastructure. There are more than 45% of road use, whether it be for people or for merchandise transportation. There are 1 million kilometers in all of France. It's really a mesh of roads. And of course, this includes mountain roads and countryside roads. If we look at the structure in Europe, it really is dense. The Minister for Sustainable Development has set down some rules for 2050, but there's also by 2030, we should have continuous information on the number of kilometers ridden. Also, there will be each year an increase in goods transportation. And the Sustainable Development Ministry also went right through to 2050 with a Baccaron National Strategy, which combines volunteer aspects throughout all of France in terms of decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. For example, this would include urban emission reductions, more bicycling, increasing the occupancy of the vehicles, and seeing the to increase the mean load of heavy vehicles. The results of this study with the carbon reading was really interesting. Of course, we have to keep in reservation. We realized that greenhouse gas emissions went down by 60% between 2012 and 2050. And they also showed an increase of traffic of passengers and goods on the roads by 2050. And it will be higher than 70% for personal travel and 52% for goods transportation. So there was also a prospective exercise of future outlooks as well. And we will be confirming all of these in the future. But it did show that the response in transportation demand is very present and extremely important in years to come, and not incompatible with compliance of the users and stakeholders regarding reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Also, vehicle traffic will give rise to enormous issues in the future as well. So as a manager of roadway infrastructure, we must anticipate tomorrow the mobility of tomorrow, since infrastructure is a key aspect of road safety, and road safety is over a long-term basis a very concrete answers have been brought to roadways regarding the mobility of tomorrow. Congestion at urban centers, around urban centers, for example. There is the performance of infrastructure in terms of regularity, and the travel time as well have been looked at, and the need to improve mobility around a city, around urban areas. We have to regulate public transportation in order to reduce travel time and make it a routine in all cases. Three areas were focused on over the past years, and there are more and more projects cropping up with shared mobility and carpooling. We are now working on a legal and technical framework to promote carpooling with vehicles of very, very low emissions. This is under study, but we can generalize this and globalize it within this orientation law concerning mobility, and have something definite by 2024. We should be able to regulate dynamic regulation of traffic, for example, or for trucks and when they go over limits, etc. And we'll be working with all of the stakeholders concerning mobility on a matrix for mobility. A master plan is being worked on, and we wish to evaluate, got lost in my papers, for the road congestion, for example. All of these measures aim at reducing greenhouse gases and the improvement of air quality. And I wanted to highlight development of digital infrastructure. For example, we should have roads henceforth, not just physical roads, but also superstructure in a digital form that would serve the users. And they would inform vehicles amongst themselves, and this is a huge area of innovation and traffic management. We work on the SCOOP project as of the past 3 years, where we will be connecting vehicles amongst themselves over 2,000 kilometers of intelligent roadways, of expressways, roads in mountains, mountain roads, countryside roads, coastal roads. 5 or 6 pilots are equipped in various counties around France, right through to Bordeaux. And the drivers receive information from the vehicles that they own. This could be accidents, breakdowns, etc. And this information is simultaneously fed back to road managers, and this can give precise information and be mixed with the precise information, for example, in wintertime or road markings, etc. And this will show in time. We'll have a lot of benefits to be drawn from this that we will be laying down. And this is a basic brick in automated vehicles. For example, we should be able to see and compensate the limits of the probe visibility. And something that's extremely important is the dynamic mapping, high definition dynamic mapping. And so it'll be sent by centimeter, and this way the vehicle will be able to be positioned laterally in its own lane, and this mapping will enable the vehicles, and the vehicles will contribute to have it work and implementation through their own probes. There are other avenues for work that are being followed by the state for organizing the mobility of tomorrow. And this is not new at all. Roadways have always been the medium for several types of services, rest areas, restaurants, service stations, etc. And so these are all to be developed along the road. The information that is that is provided by connectivity will improve all of these services. Now, we cannot reduce all of our work to just models, for example. These examples show that these new services induce a high level of service for the users. When we do this type of work, there will be new issues regarding maintenance. And so I thank the organizers of this conference because of what we see in asset management and mobility. These are all major issues for all of the stakeholders involved in roadway management and innovation for tomorrow. And these are the more and more acknowledged as time goes on. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you for these explanations. For the past 10 years, I was very pleased to head a project, and we've visited with VINCI about 20 cities, and innovation and smart cities projects have changed the way that we do live. And so it was with all the more pleasure that I ask the CEO of VINCI, Mr. Huillard, who will talk to us about the roads of tomorrow.
L'avantage de passer en dernier.
The advantage of being last is fact you can take more time, right, Alex? And the drawback is that you realize that what you want to say has been already said several times, but those have for the preceding speakers, which is good news after all, because this means this was not a win-win situation, but we all, no matter where we come from, well, we do understand what is at stake, what is going to happen as regards the development of mobility, and especially as regards the roadways. I'd also like to thank the organizer of this conference. When Jacques Tavernier called me up, who offered me to speak here, he said, why would he honor me in such a way? What qualities do I have, did he think? And I have to say that the roadways, which at VINCI represent 20% of our activities, and wrongly so, does have a rather conservatory image. Well, this roadway is certainly one of our activities, which is have to live up to great challenges, perhaps the most important, the general challenge that we have in our group, VINCI. So thank you very much, Jacques. Thank you for having offered me to be able to participate in this Congress. But first and foremost, I like to say a few words, which is not very original, but I like to say that tomorrow's city, the sustainable city, the smart city, will be much more dense, even more dense than today, because the density allows the brain to connect more easily, but this density also necessitates to optimize, to develop the mobility infrastructures in the cities and around the cities and between the cities, not necessarily by increasing the dedicated surface to mobility, but by optimizing the best usage of these infrastructure. My second conviction is that the economic development has to go through of the mobility or development of mobility infrastructures, and the last ones are even allowing us to accelerate the economic development. Is true in the emerging country. We know what's happened in China for the last 25 years, and we're all looking what's happening today in Latin America, in countries such as Chile, Colombia, and Peru, Mexico. And it's also true in more industrialized countries. But among these industrialized countries, well, perhaps some countries fell to sleep, and I'm thinking of United States, and also thinking of the UK, and other countries are waking up, and I'm thinking of Germany. And in France, I do believe that we are now more aware of the importance of mobility infrastructures and also the importance of roadways. But we have to recognize one thing, that the roadways among these mobility infrastructure have been set aside for about a decade after the Grenelle de l'Environnement. And one thought at a given time that ecologically speaking, the roadways were not very respectable, and one preferred other type of mobility, like the railway, for instance. And all this belongs to the past, and the roadways are just about to make their comeback. They're making their comeback because the roadways is an asset, and this represent 1 million kilometers, as somebody said. And if you want to calculate approximately, if you want to modernize this heritage, this asset, this represent of the national product, and this represent more than 80%. I heard 85% a few minutes ago, the mobility of people and freight. And this is the only possibility of mobility for 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers around the cities. Below that figure, you have other alternatives. Above 100 kilometers, you have great infrastructures. Now, whether it is the air or the rail, but you have 10 or 100 kilometers. The only way, or one very few ways of being able to go from point A to point B, is to use the road. And the quick development of car sharing and buses, coaches, well, this makes a difference between individual transportation and collective transportation. I usually say that BlaBlaCar is public service of public transportation, is of a new kind. But you have to see this in this way. Well, in conclusion, I'd like to say that the road is the first social network, and it allowed the people on this planet during the last 1,000 years to get together, to meet, to discuss, and to make commerce. So the road is making a comeback, but of course, a lot of things are at stake. And the main issue is maintenance. Very often, you can see it in many countries, but not the worst one in that case. Maintenance, wrongly so, is the one that you forget in the budget. And you know that if you need to modernize the roads, if you don't do that, well, that means the future generations have to pay for it, and this is not very sound. But in reality, it's also very intelligent, financially speaking, because €1 that hasn't been invested in the maintenance of roads today leads to overcost of up to 2 or 3 euros. It can even go as far as 5 euros if we forget for a longer time that do all this maintenance on roads. So I think, and we know it, but we have to make sure that people become that people become aware of this. Of course, the road costs a lot of money, but at the same time, it creates economic values, fiscal values, and also social values. So we need to work on models which allow us to measure this value, and also tools which allow us to excerpt one part of this value in order to finance the cost. Why not, for example, as what is being developed in Germany, right? You have to pay a road toll with a big fiscal base, and by using what the Germans have used, which is called toll collect. And you know very well that this is now going to be used to 40,000 kilometers of road. You have a toll that you pay only for the trucks, the lorries for timing. And my prognosis, this toll using the different type of new technology, GPS or what have you, well, this system is going to be developed. And very soon, sooner or later, even when we're going to use our individual car, we will have to receive a bill according to how many miles we have been traveling on our different type of infrastructure. In order to live up to this challenge, I think that we have to move ahead in two directions. First and foremost is the programs. Well, in order to move ahead, we need to measure, assess, and we need to know much better than we do today the current state of our roadways, technical state, the pavement as such, and noise or what have you, and the grip, what have you. And we need to better understand how we can collect the data in order to know in a specific way the state of our road networks. This is what we do, and thanks to that way. I'm quoting this because right now it's being used here in the city of Nice with a car. We have all the different new technology. You can have cameras, GPS, anything that you can imagine. And without stopping at 80 kilometers an hour, you can get all the data, so you can know exactly what the state of the road network is. And the other product, which is also quite interesting, there's something which has been invented. It's called ScanPrint that we have invented at Vinci. And this ScanPrint allows you to collect information on the state of the infrastructure, and especially by listening to the noise made by this infrastructure and how you deal with the signals and see the pathologies that exist on this infrastructure. The second thing to do, and this is much more difficult because there you come back to more cultural aspects, and what we have seen so far is extremely technical. It's quite easy. Technique is quite easy. It's easy to disseminate. Everybody's interested by technique. What is culture is much more slow. You need to retrain the brains. We need our new modes, new contracts, the new modes of contract where you integrate the maintenance in the long run. That is to integrate not only the maintenance of the infrastructure, but also the change in the lightning of public lighting. All this, where our British friend had done this, is called PFI or whatever, and this allows the community to be ensured that its infrastructure, its network will be maintained all the time and repaired also, if necessary, widowed and counter near London on the Isle of Wight. I don't understand why in other countries we cannot implement in a quicker way. This goes beyond what we call the, well, what we are doing, what we can do. We cannot change our way of getting to all these contracts. Now, in order to finalize this chapter, a first challenge that we see in certain countries, this is the challenge that we have in all our companies, no matter what, in order to make people come and work for us, because the roadways are not very people not seduced by why Germany is developing the PPP, we call A models in Germany. Well, it's not the only reason, but why? Yes, because the German federal government does know they don't have the resources, technically speaking, in order to be able to have this construction and then to discuss with the contractor. So they try to call thanks to the A model, and they have non-German companies be able to work in Germany, people who don't live in Germany. This is one of the reasons why the Germany is opening up to this concept of PPP, and they have non-German competitors because they don't have a problem of resources, of talents. We also, and the good news is that everything I've just said, well, these are incremental evolution within a profession that we have now for many decades. And the good news is that once again, this has been said, we are now going into a new paradigm. And the good news, this new paradigm is going to give several arguments in order to draw young talents to our professions. And the roadways, as was what's happening in industry, is coming into a new era, what I call the road 4.0, as you call industry 4.0. And now we are changing completely paradigm. And the previous speaker was extremely brilliant in order to talk about this topic a few minutes ago. And if you look at this, have a closer look, and we were not fully conscious of it, but the road was well prepared at this revolution 5.0. And for a long time now, in our road professions, we are now using 3D printers. It's called Finisher. Finisher is in 3D printers, and in our companies, and especially at Vinci, we had given to our officers, our directors, they have now a connection or mobile telephone. They can organize the work sites. They can do everything. The staff manage the staff. This is part of our everyday life. These are the first part of this revolution of the road 4.0. We have all the ingredients. We have the data. We talked about this a few minutes ago. I will not dwell on that point, but the car constructor, for the time being at least, and Michelin is not part of that. Luckily, well, the car makers have always thought that all the intelligence will be in the car, and intelligence is also in the head of the driver. We think it's not possible, and it's only thanks to a cooperation, to intelligent people in charge of the construction of cars and in charge of the infrastructure. Is the cooperation, collaboration between these two words will allow us to use at the very best all these uses in autonomous car for is quite not because the car comes at an intersection. No, matter how many leaders he has under his rule, he cannot see what is happening other side of the building where they don't have a direct vision. So in order to develop many concepts, such as, for instance, the totem like sort of hubs that would collect information as regards the environment, for instance, and they will transmit this information to the autonomous car, so the car can also be fully aware what is happening in a non-visible part of his or her environment. So by the same token, if you have a car which is now coming into a motorway, a feeder road, well, no matter intelligence that you have in the autonomous car will always need information coming from the infrastructure, which allow the fact that the car coming into the motorway can be done without any problem. And we do have a product which is a barbaric name called PAC V2X. Sorry, I didn't invent it myself. That is augmented perception. It's very knowledgeable. And this is a project that we have been developing with ADEME, and this allows us to increase the perception of the cooperative cars and autonomous car, with now to have a better perception. And I mentioned it, the assistant coming to motorway to help with changing lanes when you overtaking a bus, an alert or alarm. We have many accidents. We take our motorways in the wrong sense, and the dissemination of optimum speed in the perfect situation, and so on and so forth. The second challenge in the framework of this paradigm change after the data is to make sure that a roadway will be part of the smart city. Of course, we all have our own experience. We all have our product. It's called Power Road. We could see this outside at this exhibition. The Power Road, well, this is something where you can get the thermic energy from the sun. You can use it. You can stock it. You can heat an apartment 25% in a street. If you use the energy that can heat an apartment of 70 square meters, and perhaps to take away the snow in the parking, and do this in a very ecological. And another advantage of Power Road is thanks to the regulations of temperature. Well, this allows you to lengthen the lifespan of the road. And now we have to use the roads more and more, and we need to make sure that we have pavements that are much more resistant and resilient than we have to date. And in conclusion, I will not speak too long, Alex, and we can now use or save energy before everybody will retire. I don't think it's an illusion to imagine that we can have 100% to recycle 100% everything on our roads. The material that be recycled in the material that we use is about 70%. It's a very weak percentage. It's not a problem that we use. Well, it's a problem of material, and now we're cooperating with from the group FAIA in order to live up to this challenge, that is to make sure that could have different processes, SSM, and industrial tools, which will allow us to recycle 100% all the material in our roads. This is what all I had to say. And in conclusion, I'd like to say the data, energy efficiency, the preservation of resource, and perhaps very last point, can we accept our project? We haven't this during this roundtable. I think the major challenge that also very difficult one that makes sure that people can accept our project, that is our citizen. It's not an easy task and perhaps more and more complicated. And I think that on this specific point, there are three key questions. First and foremost, we can start a discussion. The survey on the basis of project not really efficient is extremely frustrating for our citizens. We're asking them questions and they said that everything has already decided. They think that that they've been taken for what they're not. So we need to start surveys, and there the digitalization is going to help us because we can organize this sort of referendum by using platform, by using the web. And the second key is the project, even important project, have to be supported by local opinion leaders, or the politicians, trade unions, for instance. And perhaps they're going to smile when I hear what I'm going to say. Well, this current French government is not going to build an airport in Nantes. It's not normal that the first prime minister in France would take this decision and announces this decision. I don't think there's a kind of thing that is interesting for the people living in the western part of France. It's up to the local politicians, has to be supported by local opinion leaders. And the third key, once everything has been done, we have to go very quickly, move ahead very quickly, very fast, because the real value to the fact that you go or move ahead very fast. Okay, the red roadway is now making its own revolution. It's now coming into the 4.0, and you have to go through technical innovation. We had now looked at them, and perhaps we need more cooperation between car makers, infrastructure creators, and the public authorities. Another revolution goes through experimentations. Nobody has the solution all single-handedly. Nobody all of them has the whole truth. Here, as elsewhere, now there's a digital area. Now we are questioning the old models. Sorry, we need to be daring and to experiment and accept to make errors, evaluate, assess, and go ahead, move ahead again. And this was this movement, PPRS, was extremely important. Yes, the road is making its new revolution. Welcome to the new road 4.0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Xavier Huillard. We have a few minutes left for our roundtable session. What did you maintain? What did you remember from what was said for the innovations?
Particularly noted in what you've just heard from the other speakers. Professor.
From my perspective, I think there were
Right up against the chin so we can hear.
Sorry, okay. So from my perspective, I think that the messages across all of the presenters were actually very common. I think that there was a need for innovation. I think there was a need for speed. I think that everybody talked about collaboration, the need for, and indeed, that no one company, no one government, no one organization has all of the answers. And that if we don't work together in a new framework in order to be able to deliver all of this, we aren't going to achieve the potential that roads have to be able to answer the mobility issues of the future. So I think there was a lot of commonality from my perspective across all of us.
Alexis, une remarque?
Oui, j'ai exactement le même sentiment. C'est comme ça que vous avez commencé votre présentation, Monsieur Huillard, sur le fait qu'on partage le constat sur les challenges, sur les enjeux et sur des briques de solutions et comment est-ce qu'on peut passer de l'ambition à l'action plus rapidement. Je pense qu'il y a tous les briques pour le faire ensemble et il faut le faire vite.
La question que Xavier Billard a posée, c'était l'acceptabilité.
We could do it fast. Yes, it's also by the citizens that we are. How can we adapt all of these required innovations? But of course, the policies and the politicians and decision makers don't all come, don't back us.
Politicians to make this happen. Jens.
To answer your question, I think it's all about awareness building, and the distinguished last speaker actually made that point too. We need to highlight to the people how important roads are, how important transport is, and we always do it in a very simple way. We say everything in this room has been at one point on a truck. To have a coffee down here in Nice, you need 29 companies from 18 countries to have a cup of coffee. So these simple things need to be communicated. And I think this awareness raising vis-à-vis the public, vis-à-vis the politicians is really important. And we have, as you said, we have common messages. We just need to work together and get them out in a proper way. Thank you.
We had a very interesting roundtable about communication yesterday, about how to communicate these kind of issues where they were brought up. And Jean Ledal, qu'est-ce que vous souhaiteriez dire? Vous êtes en...
What would you like to say, sir? Of course, you with your colleagues in the world of politics, would you handle all of these challenges?
Très important ces derniers mois, ça a été les assises de la mobilité.
Yes, I think that there were this conference on mobility, and there, were 30 propositions coming over the internet. So, concerning the roads, a very important point was the means by which we can actually keep up and manage the assets, actually, depending on all of the prospects that were emphasized by our speakers. Of course, that's very important, but also more technical mechanisms and the bidding and how to lead all of the calls for tender upstream from the project already. And there's quite a lot of progress to be made there, I think, as you mentioned, so that the project be really adapted by all stakeholders, local stakeholders, but also, and this is important for us, is to find funding for leading new policies. The new road will be well maintained, and this you need to devote great amounts of financing for this, of course, and this was mentioned in the introduction. And of course, it could be royalties or some kind of duty by for the heavy vehicles, for example, that can contribute, etc. And so it's the financing of the roadways now that's really important. Of course, we have to look at the future. Of course, now we could continue for hours, of course, in this type of a round table, but I ask one sentence of you. If you had a crystal ball, if you had a crystal ball, what would tomorrow's roads be like? Would there be satellites there? Make us dream. Okay, 50 years. Okay, 50 years from now. Okay, no problem. Vehicles are all intelligent vehicles. They don't belong to me. And so, which means that I, as a highway concession, I don't have a lot of customers, but some big customers, maybe that have bargaining power that would be more significant than what we have in today's world, where we have millions of individuals. And of course, the roads will be exchanging information with intelligent vehicles all the time, all along the entire infrastructure. And of course, videos around the city to have best regulations that are made possible by these intelligent vehicles, and of course on a surface that is less than today's. And of course, what will we be doing of roadway surfaces that we will have picked up because of more fluid traffic? Oh, so you are more of a paradise than a nightmare, right? Well, yes, but you have to explain it all to the inhabitants, of course. And of course, I don't want to go over again what I touched on a moment ago, but it's just that we have to decentralize. They are people that live in their own ecosystems. Roads must be explained by people who use the roads, but who are in charge of them as well. One sentence. Well, lots of things have been said, but of course, just a few words then. Intelligent vehicles. And of course, we will no longer be owners of our cars, our vehicles, connected highways, and we are organizing ourselves to do this, perfectly well maintained.
I just would add drones. I think if you look into 50, 60 years, transport will be done by drones.
Oui, donc j'allais dire la même chose, route aérienne, peut-être. En plus de la route terrestre.
Professor, your vision of the future.
That will be air. It will mostly be in the air.
Would be that roads provide social connectivity, social mobility, whilst delivering added functionality, whether or not that is cleaning the air, whether or not that is delivering energy to the ecosystem, but they are just the way that we connect society.
Perfect. On aurait pu continuer pendant des heures avec une table ronde aussi prestigieuse, mais l'essentiel a été dit. Thank you very much indeed to all of you. A big round of applause. Vous pouvez regagner vos places dans la salle. Merci en tout cas de votre soutien.
Thank you very much for your support. We are almost finished because we still have to. Now we ask for the World Road Association, Patrick Malajac, who will talk to us. So.
Merci beaucoup. Ce congrès PPRS 2018 a bien évidemment évoqué de...
Thank you very much. There were a lot of topics linked to the road here. The IPCR, the PIARC, as Alex calls it. But we also need to discuss things face-to-face. And also we need accelerated knowledge. We need knowledge, but we need to speak to each other. So I invite you in October to the United Arab Emirates, where we have our next World Congress on the topic of bringing cultures together around economy. And we will be presenting the works of our 21 committees. There will be study groups, and our next work program, I invite you formally there to visit there. And thank you. We can just launch the film, please.
In 2019, Abu Dhabi will play host to the World Roads Congress. The capital city of the United Arab Emirates is one of the safest cities in the world, and Abu Dhabi's diverse population, made up of over 200 nationalities, make it an immensely attractive destination. It's renowned as a global hub, with half the world's population within a 5-hour flight, making it the ideal location for connecting cultures and enabling economies. The UAE has something for everyone, from a rich and diverse cultural heritage to an ultra-modern cutting-edge lifestyle, perfect for a healthy and safe family life, allowing expatriates from all over the world to call the UAE home. At the World Roads Congress in Seoul, Abu Dhabi was named as the next host city and is expected to attract up to 5,000 delegates. Exhibitors and sponsors will have the ideal mix of relevant industries in one location. All will have the opportunity to attend technical sessions and engage with experts from around the world.
We would like to welcome transport ministers from all over the world to discuss challenges and innovative ideas. The World Road Congress is happening between 6th to 10th October 2019 in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates.
The 2019 World Roads Congress will be held at the Abu Dhabi National Exhibition Centre. During downtime, delegates can enjoy quality time at some of our world-class amusement parks like Ferrari World, Yas Water World, or enjoy a magical desert safari. In the last 3 decades, the massive investment and planning in infrastructure has paid off handsomely. And today, the UAE is considered a world leader when it comes to its roads, tunnels, bridges, buildings, and transportation systems. And naturally has attracted some of the most talented architects, civil engineers, and experts from around the world. In the birth year of the UAE, the E11 Sheikh Zayed Road was approved and construction began. By 1980, it was completed and now stretches from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, through Sharjah, all the way to Ras Al Khaimah.
We look forward to welcoming you in Abu Dhabi, connecting cultures and enabling economies.
Parfait. Merci.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Patrick, and for this film, which invites us to this meeting in 2019. And now I have pleasure in asking our president, to close our plenary session. A nice round of applause and everything that they have done. So I will perhaps begin with a few questions. Jacques, what is your impression of these past 3 days?
A little relieved is the good word.
Relieved, absolutely. Yes.
Soulagé.
Yes,
Soulagé. Soulagé in French. Because to be honest, 2 months ago, I was very worried because the level of inscription was very low. But finally, you came, and you came many. We are in the Congress more than 1,000, and precisely 1,052 people. And people attentive, and in the work session, we have a lot of people and a very good discussion. And I am happy. And I am happy also because I have a lot of message of you, but you are also happy. Exhibitors, delegates, and if you are happy, the President of Congress is happy.
You look very happy too, and we're all very happy that you've got your voice back, which you didn't have at the beginning of the meeting. Jean-François, en français ou en anglais? En français peut-être.
What should we retain from the program? Certain key parts. Well, the program was structured in 16 sessions, and each session had a different topic in order to cover the whole spectrum of topics, which had to do with the rehabilitation, modernization of pavements, and the whole idea is to describe the current situation and also see what the future revolutions can be. And it was an excellent participation. Even during the morning session, that shows that everybody was interested. And what we could see, thanks to the question which was raised after the presentations. In a few minutes, I cannot mention all the main ideas which were mentioned, but I like to focus just on a few aspects. The first one, that is the key question on financing. It appears very clearly And this is true for all the countries that was trying to ensure the maintenance and to have a sustainable maintenance at a good level. Well, everybody, that we all need extra budgetary resources. That is clear in all the countries. And we have a rather wide spectrum of solution when you have to pay either taxes or tolls or what have you. And not always easy to make sure that the public at large will accept this. It's not all the case in France. We'd have to make sure that you can have this accepted by the Ministry of Transportation. Another key aspect is that this acceptability is stronger when you don't have to pay taxes for it. And as regards the specific aspect for Europe, that is what is covered, what is called Euro vignette, will have extremely important consequences on the possibilities that open up as regards taxes and extra budgetary means. Another important point is the commitment of the state and the local communities. What we can say that in a more important part of countries, we had a traditional role of the authority, and now we have a public authority which is in charge of the most strategic part of the road network. That means that you have an operator which has all the competence which will ensure the scheduling of the work and use at the best way all the human and financial means. And that means that you have contracts with one specific objective, and you need also to have a very transparent view on the means that are going to be used. And that means you have different forms that have been put into place. You have the example of the city of Nice, how the situation can be managed. This is done at the French department level, and use that you can put together different means that is between the small communities and the big communities. And a more technical aspect.
Des systèmes de gestion. Donc on ne peut pas résoudre les problèmes actuels du jour au lendemain. Donc il faut avoir une vision à long terme de l'évolution, être capable de saisir quelle peut être l'évolution de l'état du réseau et de pouvoir bâtir des stratégies d'intervention pluriannuelles. Ça passe par l'emploi de certains outils, donc le système de gestion. On en voit l'usage se répandre de plus en plus et montrer leurs fruits. Et là encore, ça participe à la responsabilisation des opérateurs en charge et des organismes en charge de la gestion routière, dans la mesure où ils peuvent être maintenant amenés à devoir prendre des engagements par rapport à certains indicateurs d'état du réseau. Avant-dernier point, celui donc des nouvelles technologies qui a été abondamment traité lors de la table ronde précédente, mais donc lors des séances qui ont été consacrées à ce sujet, il est clair que donc il y a un facteur émergent majeur, c'est l'information. Donc l'information qui provient des échanges de communication entre le véhicule et l'infrastructure et de véhicule à véhicule. Et ce que l'on a vu des présentations qui ont été faites et qui viennent d'horizons multiples, c'est qu'on en est pour le moment juste au début, donc pour explorer la multiplicité des applications possibles. Donc on est loin d'être en capacité de pouvoir dire les bénéfices que l'on peut retirer de ces échanges et de ce traitement de l'information, soit pour le gestionnaire, soit pour l'opérateur, soit pour l'usager. Et cette question de la donnée, comme ça a été dit à plusieurs reprises tout à l'heure, elle sera certainement l'élément essentiel dans l'évolution de la route face à l'émergence des conduites automatisées, véhicules autonomes. Dernier point, c'est donc je voudrais parler un peu de l'industrie. Donc c'est la question des progrès dans le domaine des techniques routières. Alors nous sommes malheureusement dans un secteur où le progrès technologique qui est fait est très difficilement perceptible du public, qui ne voit qu'une surface de route qui en général est noire, et donc qui n'a absolument pas le sentiment sur les évolutions qui concernent la manière dont l'infrastructure est conçue et réalisée. Pourtant, les progrès sont réels et substantiels, notamment dans les champs du recyclage, réemploi des matériaux, mais aussi de l'atténuation des impacts environnementaux et sur la santé des personnels. Ce sont des choses qui sont fondamentales. Et on a ici, donc, sur ce sujet, des enjeux de communication pour montrer que la route, effectivement, c'est un secteur technique de progrès, et aussi, donc, de faciliter le déploiement de ces progrès technologiques. Je m'en tiendrai là pour cette intervention, donc qui laisse de côté les sujets qui ont été mentionnés, de l'évolution aussi des modes de contractualisation sur lesquels on a discuté, les questions également d'introduction par exemple de l'approche système sûr en sécurité routière et bien d'autres. Et donc, je crois qu'on a envisagé, donc, à l'issue de ce congrès, dans les prochains mois, avec l'aide des gens qui ont été rapporteurs de ces séances, de produire une synthèse beaucoup plus complète de l'ensemble de ces échanges qui vous sera restitué et diffusé.
Parfait, merci beaucoup Jean-François de cette conclusion. Avant de donner la parole à Jacques pour conclure, juste vous dire à 13h30 et quelques, apparemment, donc un cocktail nous attend. 14h30.
Now you are invited to a cocktail, and then we have 3 technical visits. Go to this room that's called Clio. You have an air and underground section and the security systems on the Promenade des Anglais, and the city of the command center, the op center of the Escota highways. And so now we have the video conference of this meeting on the PPR site. And this is very important. There is a satisfaction questionnaire that will be sent by email. And you can tell us, what was good so that we can improve things in future. So Jacques, last word.
Remember, the first point is the reaffirmation, the confirmation of the essential role of the road. I think the comeback of the road, said Xavier Huillard, I think it's very important. I think it's a main point. And the second point is the necessity to give the priority to maintenance and regeneration. I think it's a very big conclusion, and I think it is a consensus on these 2 points. I have a long list of thanks, because to organize this event, a lot of people have worked a lot, and I would like to thank all the speakers, 100 speakers, during these 3 days, our partners, our sponsors, which would support us for make a success of this Congress, all the exhibitors who show innovative solutions, Alex, it's with talent and business. The organization team, the executive committee, the program committee chaired by Jean-François Corté, the advisory and promotion committee chaired by Juan José Poti, the sponsor committee chaired by Jean-Claude Roffet, the women and men of the shadow translators, GL Evans team around Myriam Solas, Acropolis team, and would like thank especially two pillars of this Congress. I speak about Jean-Claude Roffet and Étienne Le Bouteiller. It was our pillars, our tireless ambassadors. Without them, this Congress would not exist. I thank you to applaud them. Hey, stand up, stand up. Where is Jean-Claude? Not Jean-Claude? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Last but not least, I would like to thank you all for attending the Congress, participating and sharing your ideas, your experience, and your road passion. I hope the Congress has met with your expectations and you spent a fruitful, useful, and nice time with us. Thank you very much. Long live the road. On the road in 2050, I think the road 4.0 will be here. And I think all the road community is ready to respond to this challenge. Welcome back and see you on Friday, 5 April for the International Road Maintenance Day initiated by Juan José. Thank you very much.